Hello and welcome to the Boro Breakdown podcast, another lowdown show, and this time it's on signing number 10, Lewis O'Brien. Lewis joined on a season-long loan from Nottingham Forest. But before we get to our thoughts today, I thought we'd speak to Brady from Takes That Chance podcast to get a Huddersfield perspective on Boro's new signing.
Hello, it's Brady from Takes That Chance, the Huddersfield Town fan podcast. Yeah, your listeners are getting quite familiar with me, like you say, Johnny. Stop signing players that used to play for us, that's what I say. But yeah, Lewis O'Brien, really, really good player. I think really good move for him, pleased. What's he like? He's not going to get you the goals or assists from midfield. And I'd be interested to see what he's like in a team where you should expect to be up the higher end of the table. But what he was so good with us was he kind of does the work of two midfielders. He never stops running. He's just, it's one of them, like, I think you're going to see it when he plays a couple of games soon. You'll really appreciate what he does. But he's a tireless midfielder who never stops running. And what was so good for us, and particularly in that Carlos Corberan season where we made the playoff final, was he can pick up the ball from, he's box to box. He can pick up the ball from a defending position and he can run 40, 50 yards with it and somehow manage to shirk a lot of tackles, like avoid them and just, lay it off to someone in the opposition box. So he's really good. I think, I'm excited to see how he'll do with you guys. Slightly sad as well because I feel like that's exactly the type of midfielder we need. But anyway, yeah, that's his main strength. I think you're going to get that athleticism. He's never going to stop running, and he's going to help you get out of sticky situations. And I think he's a real fan's favourite, and he's not the one who's going to, although he can score occasionally an angry goal and hit from 20, 25 yards out, he's not really going to do that. He's not really going to get you assists, but he's going to be your one that, does all the hard work and gets a clapped off at the end because you've seen the shift he puts in. So he's really good. As I say, like weaknesses, he's not going to put that, that pass that the Fred for an eye of a needle to set up people, and he's not really going to get you goals. But he is really good. I was gutted, obviously, that he went to Forest, particularly after they beat us in the playoff final, but just more gutted that he didn't get a chance to play because I think he is really, if he didn't have this season where he went on loan to DC United and didn't really get in the Forest team because they signed about 500 players, I think he is probably lower Premier League quality. So I think you've got a real gem on your hands, and hopefully he can rebuild his career a little bit because someone who, let's say is talking right now said when he was linked with Leeds under Marcelo Bielsa that if Calvin Phillips could get called up for England by being coached by Marcelo Bielsa, then maybe Lewis O'Brien would be a similar shout. He's not like Calvin Phillips, but that just probably shows you how highly I rate him at Town. Genuinely a fantastic midfielder you've got here, and I'm really excited to see how he does. And to be honest, really gutted that it's not at us because there was hopeful shouts, but yeah, really top midfielder.
Thanks for that, Brady. Yeah, he should have a segment on our show. He's been on 4 or 5 times already this season, and it's still just turned September. So thank you very much for that, mate. Do appreciate it as always. But Dana, O'Brien, our 10th signing, he said in his interview that it was a long time coming, and I was quite taken back by that because he must have been linked for Boro for a long time. But he's signed now. But what's your initial thoughts on Boro's new recruit?
Yeah, I am a really big fan of this deal. I have to say, I think Lewis O'Brien is a really top midfield player. If I was to just throw out some buzzwords to describe him, I would probably say nippy, neat, live wire. He's got that really enjoyable low centre of gravity, so he can lure opponents to him and then shift it beyond them. That kind of attacking gravity is Ali Maxwell, if not the Top 20 podcast, would say. A foul beta. He did win the second most fouls the last time that he was in the championship, but he was fouled 103 times, one less than foul magnet that is Callum O'Hare. So if you think about how he dribbles with the ball, very, very good. He sees the game well too, provides nice passes into players, making runs into the box. He himself is a very box-to-box midfielder. He can tackle, he can pass, he can dribble, a really high energy, high octane type of midfielder. Very well-rounded, dare I say, complete. Can you be a complete player in the Championship? In terms of attributes, potentially so, but just a couple of stats as well. The general makeup of Lewis O'Brien, I think, is very summarised here. In 2021-22, he was in the top 10 for tackles won, successful take-ons, and fouls drawn. He was in the top 10% for progressive carries amongst Championship midfielders that season, averaging 2.82 per 90. So he likes to get on the ball and drive. He was averaging 3 dribbles per 90 in that season as well, the most of any central midfielder who played over 20 games. To compare that, Boro's best, Marcus Tavernier, was third on 2 dribbles per 90. He was actually more of a dribbler than a ball carrier. More of a dribbler and a ball carrier than a passer, I would say. His 39.59 passes per 90 is fairly low compared to other Championship midfielders, under the average of around 45.7. But I honestly think we have left the best deal of the window until almost last, because Lewis O'Brien, when he was at Huddersfield, was some player. And if we can get him to rediscover that Lewis O'Brien, then we've got a very good player on our hands. I will say, though, like the point on rediscovering the Lewis O'Brien, he hasn't exactly fallen off. He's not plateaued in ability. It's just that, unfortunately, things haven't quite fit into place at Forest. Obviously, them having signed several players, and then he got an illness, which we'll hear about a little bit later from Chris. But I am very, very happy that we've signed Lewis O'Brien. What about you, Jonny? What do you think about him?
I think it's a really good deal. I do. I think, although I would have preferred it if we got him on a permanent contract, and we signed him on a longer term deal. But for me, I think it's really good. I think it's exactly what we need in the midfield. When we talk about the tackles and trying to intercept play and start again, and need someone who can maybe start again by a short pass or trying to dribble forward. I think this is kind of the right profile for us to bring in. Good tackling ability, sees the game really well. You can see obviously on the clips that we're kind of showing that his ability to recover play and get a team moving again is really, really good. And he can get people up the pitch. And I think Middlesbrough in the last few weeks have been in a place where we're trying to play it from side to side. It's quite slow, it's quite lethargic. It's not as the tempo we want it to be. This could be a nice way for us to maybe mitigate that and start into something new. So for me, I'm really, really happy with the deal. I think it's a great signing. I echo exactly what you think in terms of we probably left one of the best signings to last. And I just, again, I hope he replicates his form, because we've got a very top Championship player here, and he probably would be a Premier League player.
Definitely.
It's just a shame that Forest went with let's sign everyone under the sun and hope for the best, because unfortunately, he's went into the mixer a little bit there in terms of like loads of different player profiles, new signings. They're going to get played over people that are already there. And he went to the MLS just to get game time, and I'm glad that he did. But there's a lot of teams that are after him as well in that season. They just couldn't land that permanent contract. So they've let him out on loan this time around, and I'm hoping that if we were to do well this season, we can get him on a permanent next season. But
he's a little bit of a...
Go on.
I was going to say he's a bit of a terrier midfielder. I know in the last podcast I said about maybe having a Rottweiler. I think Lewis O'Brien is kind of like the terrier type. He's very all action, as he himself described, very involved. He likes to get on the ball, but he's very happy to get involved in terms of just getting stuck in the tackle and stuff like that. And I think the reason why I'm so happy about this signing is because when he was at Huddersfield in that playoff season for them, I thought, wow, what a good player he is. But then that was it. It was the type of, he's a great player. I wish that we could have someone of his ilk, rather than I wish that we could have Lewis O'Brien, because the trajectory of Lewis O'Brien was Premier League bound that summer, the same summer that Boro had obviously finished 7th after that car crash of a performance and result against Preston. So it was never realistic that we would land Lewis O'Brien. So I'm glad that things have fallen into place whereby he has maybe lost his way ever so slightly just due to the factors that we mentioned, and Boro have, I mean, let's be honest, we haven't improved in terms of league position right now because we sit bottom of the table. But I'd like to say that I'd like to think that our aspirations are just that little bit more, maybe further along the line, so that we can attract somebody like Lewis O'Brien.
Yeah, I quite like that you've called him a terrier, and he played for the Terriers in
I didn't even notice that, I didn't even notice that.
I feel like you did that on purpose, to be honest.
I definitely didn't. I only have one brain cell, Jonny, not two.
Yeah. Well, a terrier playing for the Terriers. Like, what more do you want? But it's going to be interesting to see how he beds in. Where do you think, or who do you think he'll start for in the team? Then, because Hayden Hackney and Jonny House are currently occupying those two spots. There is talk amongst the fan base that we could potentially change formation, or they want to change formation. Things haven't been going particularly well so far. Build-up's a little bit different from the previous year. But where do you think he fits?
I think he plays on that left-hand side of the midfield too, for now. As much as I think, excuse me, Jonny Howson has been good this season. And I mean, Jonny Howson always seems to have like a sort of phoenix rising from the ashes type trajectory. But I think Lewis O'Brien's quality is quite obvious from the last time that we were in this division and the last time that he was in this division, sorry. So I would probably play him on the left. Obviously, he is a left footer, so it definitely complements. But it will be interesting because as he is a ball carrier, Hackney is very similar in that he wants to drive forward with the ball, and we're seeing that a lot more this season. We saw it last season, to be fair, but I think we're seeing it a lot more this season. So I think just having someone like Lewis O'Brien that wants to do that, but can also add to that with the tackling, the tracking back, the very energetic type attributes that he has, I think could work. But I would like to see him start. There's no time to waste. If we misuse or underuse Lewis O'Brien, I'm going to be devastated because he is and can be a fantastic signing and player for us.
Yeah, be a travesty if we don't play him enough to us. But just like you're saying there, it could be you think might be the Howson role. Could very much well be Hackney as well. You were saying there on the profiles, they are very similar to some extent. Obviously, no player exactly the same, but they do share some similar characteristics. And you could see him on the left, House on the right, or you could see all three of them in there. It's very interesting. We've now got options in that midfield. You've got someone who's a bit more dribbly and can tackle. You've got Howson who can do a bit of both. You've got Hackney who's more of trying to get forward. You've got Balassa who's more of the passer. And Balassa the passer, with a really good passing range. But let's move on, and let's listen to Chris from AnalyticsForest, because we did get him from Nottingham Forest, and we kind of want to know a little bit more as to why they're letting him out on loan.
For me, is one of the best signings of the Championship of this window. I was surprised that Sheffield United and maybe Luton didn't come in for him. He started the first 5 league games for us last season, and he was excellent in the home games against West Ham and Spurs. He got man of the match against West Ham, and he was literally everywhere that day. I clipped up a video of his game, which I tweeted out, and I'll send it to the guys on the pod for you to see. But yeah, he was immense. He then had a couple of tough games against Man City away, which you can kind of forgive him for, and at Leicester away, where we played a 2-man midfield. We played 4-2-3-1 that day, and he got a little bit exposed, but I can't really put that all down to him. He then picked up a bit of an illness, which I think took a bit of a time for them to get to the bottom of, and he couldn't work his way back in really to a starting lineup after that. Forest then obviously signed a few more in January, and he was free to go out on loan. His loan move to Blackburn fell through on deadline day, and there wasn't really many other options for him. But then he had to kind of head out to the States. I think it shows a good character that he did go out to the MLS. I think there's a lot of players that will perhaps have sulked and maybe waited for the summer, picked up a paycheck, but he didn't do that. Got his game back. His underlying numbers very promising over in the MLS. Those trademark progressive runs, dribbles from midfield, they look back. He ranks in the top 5 for both of those central midfielders. So any signs of that maybe illness lurking around still, I think, have gone. He was the best player on the pitch against us in the playoff final for Huddersfield. I think if anyone watched that, you'd have realised that. And I think you all know how good he is, or good he was that season for Huddersfield. For me, you've got one of the best midfielders in the league. I'll be keeping a close eye on him. So, have a good season, Boro fans.
Thank you very much for that, Chris. So most importantly now, Dana, we do rankings. So we ranked every single transfer that we've had this season out of 5. I dished out my first 5 for Engel, and we've just not seen the best out of him yet, but it's still time. And, predictions are just fun, so don't take it too seriously. But how would you rank this signing out of 5, Dana?
I think I'm about to dish out my first 5. I don't think that I have given a signing 5 out of 5 yet, have I?
You haven't? No, you haven't.
No, well,
so here we go.
Yeah, it is time, Jonny. It is time. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5 for Lewis OBrien. Just a really, really good signing, really, and adds further quality to our midfield. So I'm looking forward to him really getting integrated into this team. Obviously, we saw him the other day against QPR off the bench. I want to see him start. I think he's a lovely, wonderful, silky type midfielder, and I think it'll be if we get the Lewis OBrien back from the last time that he was in the Championship, then we've got one hell of a player.
And you know what? I'm going to dish up my second 5. I'm in agreement. I think he's a very, very, very good signing. I could be harsh and say it's a 4.5 because it's not a permanent, but the actual player itself, I think it's a really good deal for us. And fingers crossed he gets the game time because he's got the quality there to make us better. So we should be striving to get better within that. So fingers crossed he does really well. But yeah, he's my 5 out of 5 as well. But then thank you very much for joining me as always. And if you like these lowdown videos and audios, do give them a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, your podcast providers, and on give a thumbs up on YouTube, and don't forget to subscribe and all that kind of fun stuff. So it helps us get found and charted. And yeah, but this has been the Boro Breakdown podcast, and that was all your Lewis OBrien chatter in a pod. Up the Boro Breakdown.